Over time, your database will grow and change, and records will get added and removed. Throughout these changes, it's possible that records in some tables might lose their connection to related records in other tables. If we think back to our table relationships, the most typical is the one-to-many relationship. One record in Table A corresponds to many records in Table B. You may often hear this referred to as Table A being the parent and Table B being the child. When a record in the parent table has no corresponding records in the child table, those records are called widows. When a record in the child table has no corresponding records in the parent table, they're called orphans. In either case, it might be an indicator that something has gone awry, or it might be just fine, depending on the particulars of your data. While you'll have to make the decision on whether something needs to be done about orphaned or widowed records, the first step is to identify where this has occurred. The unmatched query is the tool for that job. To create an unmatched query, we'll start with the Create tab and load up the query wizard. One of the options here at the bottom is the Unmatched Query Wizard. Let's go ahead and select that and say OK. So what I want to do with this query is find any of my salespeople that don't have any orders associated with them. On this first screen, I'm going to choose my Employees table. Let's go ahead and say Next. The second screen asks me which table contains the related records. I'm going to choose the Orders table here. Let's go ahead and say Next. Here we're going to define which fields connect the two tables. Now, by default, Access is going to take a look at our table relationships to establish this relationship. For instance, it correctly identified that the employee ID in the Employees table should match the salesperson ID in the Orders table. Let's go ahead and say Next. Here, it's going to ask us which fields do we want to see in our query results. For this particular query, I want to find out which employees don't have any sales records. So I'm going to choose Employee ID, their first name and last name, their department, and because they might be a new hire, I'll take the hire date as well. We'll add that over. Let's go ahead and say Next. And finally, it asks us, what do we want to name this? Let's go ahead and say Employees Without Matching Orders. I think that's a fine name for this particular query. So we'll go ahead and say Finish. Now, the query returns all of our employees that don't have any sales data. Now, many of these employees work in departments outside of sales. For instance, we have this person in the manufacturing department and these people in the marketing department. Now, it might make sense within our organization that these people just don't have any sales because they don't work in the sales department. We can further refine what this query is telling us by going up to the Home tab and switching it into Design View. If I only wanted to evaluate my salespeople that don't have sales, then I can put a new criteria here on this department field. So underneath department, I'm going to type in sales. Now it's going to filter to just my employees that are in the sales department and find those people that don't have any sales. Let's go ahead and say Run, and we'll see that indeed we have 2 employees that don't have any sales. Let's go ahead and save this query. I'll try closing it and say yes to save the changes. Let's run one more Find Unmatched query. Once again, I'll go to the Create tab, Query Wizard, and Find Unmatched. Let's go ahead and say OK. This time, I want to find any states that don't have any customers. Let's go ahead and say States and say Next. The second table is going to be our Customers table, and we'll go ahead and say Next. We'll go ahead and accept this join between state abbreviations in the States table and the state field in the Customers table. Go ahead and say Next. What fields do we want to see? Well, I just want to know what states don't have any customers, so I'll pull the state name over. Go ahead and say Next, and we'll leave the title here, States Without Matching Customers. I'll go ahead and say Finish to see the results. And here we can see the 2 states within the United States that don't have any customers from them. So while the unmatched query will be able to show you where orphaned or widowed records may occur, only you will be able to determine if this is a problem for your database. In many cases, it won't be a problem at all. But when there is a problem, the unmatched query will be your go-to tool for identifying the issue.